In mid-February, Governor Tim Walz issued his blueprint for the state's next two-year budget. In recent weeks, the House DFL and the Senate Republicans have also released their targets for state spending. Joining me to provide greater detail on the governor's priorities is the Commissioner of Minnesota Management and Budget, Myron Frans. Thanks for being here.
Glad to be here. Thank you for asking.
As a former teacher, it's no surprise that Governor Walz has education as part of his priorities, both E-12 and higher education, though he recently said that the demands of higher education, he's only just beginning to come to understand. But what are the goals of the governor's education spending?
It's really important, as you said. I think one of the keys in the E-12 education area is to really increase the funding formula. I mean, that's sort of the magic thing around the Capitol here, is how much money do we put on the formula? And the formula is that mechanism by which we distribute money to all the different education school districts around the state. So he wanted to increase that by 3% the first year and 2% the next year, which is a really very big part of the budget proposal. So he wants to make sure, but also special education. He wants to increase funding for special education. As we all know, special education continues to become more expensive and it eats up a bigger part of the formula. So if you can really add money to the special education, you really ensure that the 3% and 2% on the formula really are effective. And then the other area is in pre-K funding to make sure that we keep those slots open for pre-K around the state. So though in the E-12 education is really fundamental issues to deal with, but also full service community schools is an idea that he wants to promote too. In the higher education area, you said it well, he really learned a lot during this process. I think one of the things he wants to do is to get a better handle on what are the cost pressures in education. And one of the things that we actually gave some more money to the University of Minnesota and Minnesota State University system based upon the revised budget, in part because the both systems reached out and gave some more information about what it is that they need. So I think what he would like to do is make sure that we can provide the kind of education for higher ed that we need at a cost that most people can afford. And that's the key, is education is growing at such a fast rate, more than inflation. And we need to figure out how to tackle that.
Let's turn, if we can, to health care. Several polls in the 2018 election, voters indicated that health care was among their top priorities or concerns. What are some things that Governor Walz is proposing that would increase the accessibility and affordability of health care?
Well, first, of course, is the provider tax. As you know, it's set to sunset at the end of 2019. And that was a deal reached back in 2011. But it's been around for almost 26 years. It was a bipartisan effort to help fund health care costs. So we have got to expand or continue the health care access, the provider tax going forward. Otherwise, we have a $1 billion hole in our health care access fund in 22 and 23. So without that, we're in real trouble. But beyond that, he wants to change and go from reinsurance to a direct subsidy to people who buy insurance on the open market. Right now, in this year and last year, we used a reinsurance model to do that, and that pays down premiums across the board in the individual market, but it's kind of an inefficient model, and the governor prefers to give direct subsidies to people who are paying those premiums. So that's going to be one issue we have to resolve with the legislature. And the other thing he wants to do is bring down the cost for those people who don't get the federal tax credit and who do get his 20% premium reduction, but they still pay more than 10% of their income to health care. He wants to have a tax credit available in 2021 that would help provide a tax benefit or tax credit to those people who pay more than 10% of their income to health care. So those are the issues he's really working with. And then in 2023, we want to have a One Care Minnesota model that provides a public option for anyone who wants to participate.
So the One Care is something perhaps coming in later years, not necessarily for this next budget year.
Exactly. When it's not ready quite yet, it's going to take some more time to develop. But on the national front, we can see we may need that sooner rather than later.
Yes, with potential changes in Washington. Yeah. And of course, we have to talk about transportation funding, roads, bridges, and transit. The governor would raise the gas tax, the registration tax, motor vehicle sales tax, and also authorize trunk highway bonds to pay for the projects around the state. This would raise a significant amount of money. Is the need really this dire?
Have you driven around lately?
Lately, yes.
And you know, it is always funny because we do this in the spring and it's always pothole season. Mm-hmm. I mean, that's just one example of issues we need to address. But yes, the need is clearly, I think one of the things that happened during Governor Dayton's term was this discussion about how much do we really need to upgrade Minnesota's overall infrastructure with roads and bridges and transit. And we really felt that it was like $20 billion over 10 years. And so everyone's kind of agreed on that need. And so this package would generate $1.9 billion in 22 and 23 every 2 years. So it would fill the need to not just maintain, but to take Minnesota and take the infrastructure up. Because we've been graded at like a C or D from a lot of different engineering groups in terms of our quality. So the roads and bridges, it's not just about making them look nice and feel good to drive on. It's about safety. And also about the economics. If you're in business in Minnesota, you need those roads to get your profit, or your product or your services to market. So it's in everyone's best interest.
A couple other areas that have received attention are the lack of affordable housing across the state, both urban and rural, and also the lack of affordable childcare for working parents. What would the governor like to do to address these needs?
The first thing in the child care area is to increase the subsidy or the support for the Child Care Assistance Program. That program provides assistance to low-income families so that they can have access to child care facilities.
And there's been a waiting list for years.
I know, and we would buy down the list a little bit more, not completely because it's pretty expensive to do. So that's one thing, is to really make child care more affordable to more people. But of course the other thing is we need to get the rates up, because we need to have more child care facilities available around the state, especially in greater Minnesota. That is a true problem in greater Minnesota, is just finding available child care. So that's a problem, and it's really expensive. So that's one area. The other area that you mentioned, the affordable housing that's affordable, the governor's bonding proposal would put $150 million into housing that's affordable, as well as upgrading some existing housing. And then he would also promote Homework Starts with Home, which is a really successful program. But that was the one area he did not change in his revised budget, was in the housing area, because he feels so important. He feels that's so important. That area is so critical to education, to health and safety. So he's really focused on housing.
One more thing, in terms of big areas, the governor has frequently spoke of One Minnesota, and having come from greater Minnesota, he continues to make a case for community investments all across the state. What are some specific investments in communities all around the state to keep them healthy and thriving?
Well, he does, you're right. He does want to make sure that people at the local level have the funds to make decisions at the local level. He trusts their decisions and thinks they should be empowered to do that. So local county or local city aid for cities, county program aid for counties. We would reduce the sales tax on construction materials for local governments so they could engage in more construction projects at a lower level. So those are some of the areas, but the broadband is another one across the state. The people who say you don't need broadband expansion are the people who already have broadband, right? So, I mean, that's another critical area. So he really wants us to make sure that we push out, well, the Child Care Assistance Program expansion I mentioned, that'll happen all across Minnesota. The $1.9 billion in transportation funding we would generate with his gas tax plan would benefit all of Minnesota. So he's really focused to make sure that we deliver some good services to the people of Minnesota wherever they live.
Now, the governor's budget proposal is larger than both the House and the Senate. Will the state still be healthy if a budget of this size goes through, considering the potential economic downturn coming in the future?
Great question. In fact, we got that question from the rating agencies. Every year after the forecast, we call the rating agencies to let them know how we're doing and what the governor's budget looks like. And one of the things we told them was our budget does make sure that we don't touch the $2.4 billion rainy day fund that we have, and that we would still be balanced in the budget year, and we'd also be balanced in the 22 and 23. So what they see us doing is maintaining, balance into the future. They see us using bonding money for capital projects. One of the things they like to see is that states take care of their assets and their infrastructure. So they see our $1.2 billion bonding bill proposal as another way for us to maintain the right thing, the things about Minnesota that make it function so well. So I believe that this budget really is sound for the future. And if we do see more of a downturn, we'll have to see what happens in November. But right now, I think we're well positioned.
Commissioner Frans, thank you so much.
My pleasure. Thank you.